بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Today we start the ninth Naqd of Islam and the ninth Naqd, that's the eighth. So Shaykh Muhammad bin Abd rahimahullah ta'ala, he says al-Naqd al-Tasi', the ninth nullifier: من اعتقد أن بعض الناس يسعه الخروج عن شريعة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم كما وسع الخضر الخروج عن شريعة موسى عليه السلام فهو كافر. The ninth nullifier of Islam: whoever believes that some people are able to leave the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu, in other words, that they don't have to act upon it or abide by it. Just as al-Khadir did not have to abide by the Sharia of Musa alayhi salam, then such a person is a disbeliever. So this is the text of this Naqd, and first of all, Shaykh Muhammad Aman al-Jami rahimahullah ta'ala, he has some brief comments. So he says that everyone should know. First of all, he's going to address the shubha, which is the doubt that people use. Some people come and they say, and this is particularly from the Sufis, and they say that because al-Khadir did not abide by the Sharia of Musa alayhi salam, this is an example to show that some people, they don't have to abide by the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they use this instance as an argument, and that's why Shaykh Muhammad bin Abd rahimahullah, he put this point in the Naqd itself. So he says, Shaykh Muhammad, he says, everybody should know, first of all, that al-Khadir was not obliged to follow the Sharia of Musa alayhi salam to begin with, such that it can then be claimed that he left it. Right? So he wasn't obliged to act by it in the first place. And the Shaykh says, rather al-Khadir وَإِنَّمَا كَانَ نَبِيًّا مُسْتَقِلًّا لَهُ شَرِيعَتُهُ. He was a prophet in his own right. He was a prophet in his own right. He did not, he had his own Sharia. And he says, in fact, Musa alayhi salam did not know the Sharia of al-Khadir. He did not know the details of the Sharia of al-Khadir. So anyone who believes this argument, then this is a mistake. And he says many of the mashayikh of the Turuq as-Sufiyya, many of those who follow Sufism, this is what they follow. They fall into this shubha. And they claim that there are some people who, because they've reached Allah Azza wa Jal directly, and they can look into the Lawh al-Mahfuz, they can see into the Lawh al-Mahfuz, and they are able to take information from there directly, then they do not need to follow the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is what the Sufis, this is what they claim, and this is what they say. This is how their figureheads, how they misguide the ignorant people. So basically they say they are not in need of the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because they can take information directly from the ilm of Allah Azza wa Jal, from al-Lawh al-Mahfuz. So the Shaykh says, فَهَؤُلَاءِ الزَّنَادِقَ كَفَرَ. These people who are upon this, who make this claim, they are disbelievers, and they have departed from the way of Muhammad ﷺ, and they have not believed in the Messenger of Allah. This now contradicts belief in the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. You can't say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. You can't say this, because if you say this, this means that you believe there is no path that reaches you to Allah except by way of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you say this, and then you say that some people can reach Allah directly without going through Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this now is a contradiction. This now is a blatant contradiction. And the Shaykh then goes on to give some examples of some people in history who were promoting this idea. From them is Ibn Arabi, and from them is Ibn al-Farid. And these are two individuals. The first one, Ibn Arabi, he basically took ideas from the Yahud of emanation. They call it emanation. And these ideas came from the Yahud, from their magic, from the Kabbalah. And so what these Yahud were claiming, what they were saying, they had this philosophy and this mystical system. And so these people like Ibn Arabi, they took these ideas and then they brought this idea of Allah existed, and then he wanted to manifest himself. So he manifested himself in the creation, right? So he became the creation. There's a word that they call it emanation. This is the word in English, emanation. So he basically became the creation, and the creation is his attributes. So everything you see around you in the creation, and you see these attributes in the creation of ilm and qudra and life and whatever else, as-sam' wal-basar, that you see in the creation, these are actually the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. It is Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? So they brought this philosophy, but they disguised it in a very clever manner. Right? They used words and they presented it in a way that the average person wouldn't understand. What are these people trying to say? Right? They concealed it in philosophical language, and they spoke in ways that the average person wouldn't understand. What these guys, what are they really saying? What are they really promoting? So, and that's why many of the scholars, some scholars, they made takfir of Ibn Arabi. They said this man is a kafir. Many scholars, large numbers of scholars. And others, there were others who didn't. And that's because they didn't really understand what he was really calling to, because the way he presented this idea was very sophisticated, very, very complex. And it was hidden by terminology. And the other man as well, Ibn al-Farid, this individual, he called to al-ittihad, which means that Allah Azza wa Jal, he merges with people from within the creation. Right? They merge with Allah. People from the creation, they merge with Allah. This is called al-ittihad. And again, these are the people who believe and say that we do not need to follow the Shariah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is because they believe that there is they divide Islam into two. They say there is al-haqiqah and there is al-shari'ah. Al-haqiqah and al-shari'ah. So what they are saying is that the real secret, the real tawheed, is to believe Allah is everywhere and in everything and in every place. And there's no distinction between the created, the makhluq, and the khaliq, and the creator. These are the same thing. Right? So basically they said this is tawheed. And if you try to distinguish, if you say there is the khaliq and the makhluq, two separate things, they say this is shirk. This is shirk with Allah Azza wa Jalla. Why? Because you've now said there are two existences. There's one mawjood and another mawjood. So this to them is shirk. Right? So they say there's only one wujud. There's only one wujud, and that is Allah Azza wa Jal. So they turn this into tawheed. They said this is tawheed. And if you say that there is Allah and He exists, and He is separate, He is ba'in from His, min khalqihi, from His creation, and then there is the creation, to them this is shirk. Right? This is how they turned things the other way around. And so basically they said that the people who understand this tawheed, they are the ones who are the intelligent people. And they don't need to follow the Shariah. Why? Because they know the truth. They know the real truth, the hidden truth, the haqiqah, that which is in the batin, that which is hidden. And so they've understood this. So whoever understands this secret no longer needs to follow the messengers. You don't need to follow Muhammad or his Shariah. This is only for the ignorant people who don't really have the intellect and the ability to understand these secrets and these truths. Right? So this is what they are saying. This is what the Sufis, what they are upon. Now, so some of these people, they claimed that they were superior than the prophets and messengers, that they've reached the same level as the prophets and messengers, if not even higher than the prophets and messengers. Why? Because they say we are taking directly from al-Hayyul Qayyum. So we are receiving revelation directly. We continue to receive revelation directly. Whereas what you people are doing is you are following the people who are dead, meaning the prophets and the messengers. So this idea, you find it with the Sufis, with the extreme Sufis. And many of the people who follow Sufism, they don't really understand these ideas. They don't understand that this is what these people are really calling to. Why? Because it's very philosophical, it's hidden in complicated terms. They have all these terms, al-kashf, and which they disguise and they twist the meaning so that when a common person he hears, he doesn't think anything. He doesn't know what they're really calling to. Whereas what they're calling to is great disbelief and kufr in Allah Azza wa Jal. So the Shaykh goes on to say that anyone who claims this claim, he's really saying that sending prophets and sending messengers, there wasn't really any purpose in it. What was the point? Because if there are people who can go directly to the preserved tablet and acquire information and connect directly with Allah Azza wa Jal and receive revelation, then what was the point in sending prophets and messengers? So sending Muhammad there was no point in it. So anyone who says this speech or who believes this speech and who claims that there are some special people who do not need to follow Muhammad such people are, he says, وَالْقَوْلُ الْحَقِّ فِي هَؤُلَاءِ أَنَّهُمْ كُفَّارٌ مَارِقُونَ مِنَ الْإِسْلَامِ. That these people are, basically they are apostates and outside the fold of Islam. And then he says, لأنه ليس في الدين حقيقة وشريعة أو ظاهر وباطن. There's no such thing in Islam as there is the haqiqah and there is the sharia. There is the inward and there is the outward. These divisions are false divisions. And then he says, بل الرسل كلهم جاءوا بالإسلام إن الدين عند الله الإسلام. All of the messengers, they came with Islam. Indeed, the deen with Allah is with Islam. The ayah in Surah Ali Imran. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He made for every ummah, every nation, a particular legislation that they were to follow. And as for the asl, the foundation of the religion, then it is tawheed. And every prophet, every messenger, they were agreed and united upon that. That does not change. As for the legislation, then the legislation for for Bani Israel was different to the legislation for the followers of Isa alayhi salam, and that's the different variations and differences. But the asl, the foundation, is always the same. and this is Islam. This is the deen of Islam. So that's the speech of Shaykh Muhammad Aman, rahimahullah. And next we move to the commentary of Shaykh Ubaid, hafizahullah. And so after mentioning the Naqd, as we said before, من اعتقد أن بعد الناس يسعه الخروج عن شريعة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم, to the end of the Naqd. Whoever believes that some people are able to leave the Shariah of Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم as Al-Khadir was able to leave, as they claim, the Shariah of Musa صلى الله عليه وسلم, then he is a disbeliever. So he says, Shaykh Ubaid begins by saying, first of all, if you listen to this speech, you will see that there are lots of people present today, nowadays, who are basically saying the same thing, but it's under a different label. They say it is under Hurriyatud Tadayyun. It is under the freedom of, they call it the freedom of a religion. And that a man can choose whatever he wants. And so they have this speech, and these expressions are different, but the meaning is all of the same. It is likewise Hurriyatul I'tiqad, and or another way they say is that we need to set up Dawla Madaniyya. This is like a civil society rather than Islamiyya, right? So you see there are people who are calling to these types of ideas, and the strange thing is, you see that some of these people before, from the Khawarij, like Salman al-Awda and these people, in the 1990s they were calling for Khuruj. 20 years later now, they are calling for a Dawla al-Madaniyya, a civil society. And these are Khawarij. And look how they changed it totally the other way around. Right? Why? Because these people, they're after power. They were always after power. They were after sultan. So, it's just the chairs. So after 20 years, when they didn't get power, by way of al-khuruj, making takfir of the sinners, making takfir of the hukam, stirring the youth to make khuruj, they never got to power. So now they thought, hold on, this is not very good. This is not a good method to get power. So then what they realized is, to get power, we have to unite with the Mubtadi'ah, with all the different groups of Mubtadi'ah, the Sufiyya, the Rafida, the Ikhwan. We have to unite with them, and we have to unite with the Liberaliyya. We have to unite with them as well to get numbers. And when we get numbers, we are able to challenge the authorities and the power. We can use democracy. We can call for democracy, and we can, So look at these people, how, their hearts turn and they change. Why? Because these people were after power. They weren't after, Islam and the Sunnah and things like that. Right? So Allah exposes these people, even if it's after 10, 20, 30 years, you see the reality of what these people were really upon. So these slogans then, so look at how this is a different way. Shaykh Muhammad Aman spoke of the Sufis. Right? This is one way in which a person can fall into this Naqd. Right? By way of what the Sufis are saying. This thing here is a modern manifestation, is another way in which people fall into this, where they start calling for this civil type of Islam. And what they mean by this is democracy and whatever else comes from with that, socialism and things like that. This is what they are really speaking of. So the Shaykh is saying that all of these people who make these comments, who make these remarks, who call to these slogans, these are the people who are referred to in this Naqd that was mentioned by Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin al-Wahhab rahimahullah. And the Shaykh says, وَكَأَنَّهُمْ تَنَاسَوْا قَوْلَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. It is as if they are pretending to forget the statement of Allah, إِنَّ الدِّينَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الْإِسْلَامِ. Indeed, the deen with Allah is Islam. And وَقَوْلَهُ جَلَّ وَعَلَى وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Whoever aspires for a deen other than Islam, it will never be accepted from him, and he will be among the losers. He will be among the losers in the hereafter. So the Shaykh says, anyone who looks into media and the various means of communication today, satellite TVs, newspapers, magazines, things like that, he will see many people who ascribe to Islam calling with the likes of this call, making this call. And Shaykh says, وَهَذَا فِي الْحَقِيقَةِ انْتِكَاسٌ وَرِدَّةٌ عَنْ دِينِ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. This is basically turning on your heels and a ridda from Islam, from the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. So the Shaykh says, these people, the argument these people bring then, is they bring this argument that is mentioned by Shaykh Islam Muhammad bin Abd rahimahullah ta'ala, because they claim al-Khadir, he left the Sharia of Musa alayhi salam. He didn't have to follow the Sharia of Musa alayhi salam. So the Shaykh now goes on to bring some arguments against this argument, right? So he's going to bring some arguments against it. So he says, first of all, the answer to this, first of all, we've already established previously, this is at the beginning of his explanation, that there is no deen except the deen of Islam, which is acceptable to Allah Azza wa Jal. Secondly, we say to them, bring your evidence. Bring your evidence that Al-Khadir was upon the Sharia of Musa alayhi salam. And then he abandoned it. And then Musa alayhi salam accepted that from him. Where's your evidence for all of this? Right? That Al-Khadir was a follower of Musa alayhi salam. Then he decided to leave the Sharia of Musa. And then Musa said, yes, that's fine. You can leave. Where's your evidence for all of this? Where's the evidence? In the Quran, in the Sunnah? There is none. And they will not have any of this. And then the Shaykh goes on to say, also by making this claim or this argument, you are reviling, you are making ta'an upon two of the righteous men, Musa and Al-Khadir. Because first of all, you are saying that Al-Khadir, he made a ridda from the deen of Musa alayhi salam. And this is contradicted by the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran, He's praising Al-Khadir. He's praising him as a righteous servant who's been giving knowledge. How can you claim this and yet Allah Azza wa Jal is praising him? That's number one. And secondly, you are also making ta'an upon Musa alayhi salam, because you are saying that Musa alayhi salam accepted the ridda of Al-Khadir. That Musa alayhi salam allowed him and accepted that, he left and didn't abide by the Sharia of Musa. So all of this is there is no argument, there's no evidence. It is ta'an upon Musa alayhi salam, it is ta'an upon Al-Khadir, and there's no evidence for this at all. Then the Shaykh goes on to explain that we find in the Sunnah there is clear evidence that Al-Khadir alayhi salam was not upon the Shariah, upon the legislation of Musa alayhi salam. He says, and we know this from the Quran and the Sunnah. As for the hadith, the first hadith, we have in a hadith in al-Bukhari and likewise in Muslim, بينما موسى في ملأ من بني إسرائيل جاءه رجل فقال هل تعلم أحدا أعلم منك قال لا فأوحى الله إلى موسى بلى عبدنا خضر. In a hadith, whilst Musa was in a gathering of the Bani Israel, it was said to him by a man who came to him, do you know of anyone who is more knowledgeable than you? And he said no. So Allah Azza wa Jal, He revealed to Musa alayhi salam, rather, yes there is, our servant Khadir. So then Musa alayhi salam, he asked Allah Azza wa Jal, where can I meet this servant of yours? Because he wanted to meet Al-Khadir. So this, first of all, this is a clear proof that Al-Khadir is a separate prophet who was being given knowledge that was not given to Musa alayhi salam. That's the first thing. Second thing is that when they met together, when Musa met Khadir, when he went to where the two rivers where they met, and we see in the narrations, Musa alayhi salam, he said, he gave a greeting of salam. And Al-Khadir said, وَأَنَّا بِأَرْضِكَ السَّلَامِ. Basically he meant, this, I don't know this. I don't know your this greeting. And he said, Man anta? He qala Musa. So basically the point being that in the conversation, it is clear that Al-Khadir was not a follower of Musa, because he didn't know his greeting, he didn't know who he was. He said Musa Bani Israel, so he didn't know who he was. So how could he be following Musa alayhi salam? This is the second point. The third point is that when Musa alayhi salam wanted to follow Al-Khadir said that do not ask me about anything. Do not ask me about anything until I explain it to you. This is in the Quran. So if Al-Khadir was following Musa alayhi salam, he would have said, yes, of course, Ya Nabi Allah, I will follow you. I will follow whatever you do, whatever you say. But he didn't say that. He said, do not ask me anything until I explain it, until I mention it to you. This again clearly shows that Al-Khadir was not a follower of Musa alayhi salam. Number 4, we see that in the text, in the hadith as well, in another hadith, as related by Al-Bukhari and Muslim, Ya Musa, inni ala ilmin min ilmi Allah, allamanihi Allah, allamanihi Allah, la ta'lamuhu wa anta ala ilmin min ilmi Allah, allamakahu Allah, la a'lamuhu. He said, indeed, O Musa, I have knowledge from the knowledge of Allah, which Allah has taught to me, which you do not know. And you have knowledge from the knowledge of Allah, which Allah has taught you, which I do not know. So this now becomes clear that these are two prophets. Each has knowledge which the other one does not have. Each has revelation that the other one does not have. And one is not, Al-Khadir was not a follower of Musa alayhi salam. That's number 4. Number 5, we know that in the story in Surah Al-Kahf, where it mentions that Al-Khadir, where the killing of the boy, and destroying the ships, and likewise of rebuilding the wall underneath which there was a treasure. This is at the end of Surah Al-Kahf. We know that at the end of all of this, when he explained it to Musa alayhi salam, he said, وَمَا فَعَلْتُهُ عَنْ أَمْرِي, that whatever I did was from a command that I was given, meaning from revelation, from wahi from Allah Azza wa Jal. And so if he was following Musa alayhi salam, then he would not have done any of these things. He would not have done any of these things of his own accord. So all of this shows, these 5 points make it very, very clear that there is no argument here in the issue of Al-Khadir. This is a false argument. From the Quran and the Sunnah, all of these texts, they falsify this argument. This argument is not correct. Then the Shaykh goes on to say, these people have another argument, a second argument, and this is taken from the ayah in the Quran, La ikraha fi din. So they bring this ayah and they say that this now is a clear proof to show that it is permissible for a person, even if he is a Muslim, for him to depart and not follow the guidance and the way of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Shaykh says that the answer to the shubha is, first of all, when we look at this ayah, this verse itself, there are a number of interpretations by the Mufassirun. First of all, they say that this verse was revealed or is in connection to that when the Banu Nadir, this was a tribe of Jewish people in Al-Madinah, and they were exiled because they participated in a battle against the Messenger of Allah sallallahu, even though they had a treaty. So they were treacherous to the treaty. They allied with the pagans of Mecca, and they were involved in that act of treachery. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu, he exiled them and sent them off. So what happened is that there were many of the children of the Ansar who followed them because they were Yahud. They hadn't accepted Islam, they were still Yahudis. And so the Sahaba, they wanted to force them, they wanted to stop them and force them to accept Islam. And so the ayah was revealed, and this ayah basically said that those people are Yahud, leave them, they are not from you, and there's no compulsion in the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? So this is one interpretation or explanation of the ayah. The second explanation of the ayah is that this verse is only referring to those people from Ahlul Kitab who were upon the deen of Isa and Musa alayhim as-salam before it became corrupted. Right? So if there are Yahud and Nasara present in that time who are following the original deen of Musa and Isa alayhi salam, right? Then this ayah is referring to them. Right? Because they are upon Islam already. And they are not to be forced into the Shariah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This now is the second interpretation. And the third interpretation, and in fact the Shaykh brings a proof. He brings in evidence for this. And this is when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever he would send an army on an expedition, he would say, "Ukhruju bismillahi tuqatiluna fi sabilillah man kafara billah la taghdiru wa la taghullu wa la tumathilu wa la taqtulul wildan." He brings this hadith in which the Muslim would give instructions to the army. He would say, "Go and fight in the name of Allah, anyone who disbelieves in Allah, and do not be treacherous, do not mutilate, do not be treacherous, do not mutilate bodies, and do not kill the children." So this command was given, and it did not refer to the priests and the rabbis and those who were given to worship and whatever else. And the people who didn't plot and plan and things like that and didn't fight, it wasn't in reference to them. So this is a text that the Shaykh brings in support of that point. And then the third point that the Shaykh brings is that in fact, this is the statement of some of the scholars, not all the scholars. Some of the scholars, they are of the view that this ayah, La ikraha fi din, was mansukha, was abrogated by other verses in the Quran which were revealed thereafter. And then the Shaykh goes on to bring some points in support of that viewpoint. And as I said, this is the view of some of the scholars, not all of the scholars. There are many scholars today who hold the view that this verse still applies, and it does not conflict with the verse which commands with fighting, and that both are applicable to different situations. So the point being that in this ayah there is no proof for these people who try to make this argument. And so this is where the Shaykh, his explanation, it ends at this point, on that point. So in summary, in summarizing this Naqd, basically any person who claims that anyone has the ability to leave or to not abide by Islam, and that all the paths, they are the same, al-Yahudiyya, al-Nasraniyya, al-Islam and whatever other way, that all of them are the same. Right? This is ridda from Islam. And this is evident from the Quran and from the Sunnah. And these arguments that you see, arguments which are made by either the Sufis, from those who follow the Wahdatul Wujud and Al-Ittihad and Hulul and so on and so forth, right? They are really calling to Wahdatul Adyan, unity of religions. Whether it is them or whether it is the modernists and the liberalists, right? And many of the people among these people, there are munafiqeen amongst them, there are hypocrites amongst them. We don't know them. And we can't say that this one is a hypocrite or that one is a hypocrite. We can't say that. Because this ilm is with Allah Azza wa Jal. And we don't know that. But many of these people who are coming with this call of modernism, liberalism, and they want to undermine Islam, there are hypocrites amongst these people. So this is another way in which a person falls into this Naqd, because it clearly contradicts that which is in the Quran and the Sunnah. So we'll end the lesson here today, and this leads us now to the final Naqd, which is the 10th Naqd, which is al-i'rad an dinillahi la yata'allamahu wa la ya'mal bihi, which is just to completely turn away from Islam, not be interested, not to learn anything, and just continue with one's life completely ignorant, right? This is something that also leads a person to this is abandoning Islam, essentially, right? To live in complete ignorance and not be bothered and not learn, not anything, just turn your back completely. This is also ridda from Islam. So inshallah we'll look at that in the next lesson, and perhaps that may take a lesson or 2 lessons. Yeah, maybe 2 lessons perhaps till we finish. So we'll leave that for the next lesson. We'll end our lesson here today. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.